I think the sky is the limit when it comes to digital transformation. There's just so much opportunity. Um, and there's so much potential for growth, for service. Because to me, that's what's really important, and that's what I've always loved about technology is how it allows us to be more of service. How does it allow us, because I come from a marketing communication background and PR, how does it allow us to help others? How does it allow us to communicate better, to understand each other better, and therefore work better and do more good?
Hello and welcome to a whole new episode of Engati CX. I'm your host, Jeremy D'Souza, and today you folks are in for a treat. We have a growth strategist with us on the show today. But before I introduce you to our wonderful guest, allow me to first quickly introduce you to the magic of Engati. Engati is the world's leading multilingual no-code digital CX platform, available across 14 channels with more than 45,000 solutions created and deployed across 186 countries in every domain and use case. Engati has also been recognized as a top platform by Inc.com, TechWorld, CIO, and many others. We run the Engati blog, the video channel, and the Engati CX podcast, receiving upwards of 400,000 visitors annually. And now for our amazing guest. Shonali Burke is the president and CEO of the Shonali Burke Consulting Inc. She's a growth strategist with 2 decades of experience in the creative branding and marketing space. She has worked at the nexus of social technologies and marketing communications to help businesses more impactfully connect with their stakeholders. She is also the founder and the curator of the Measure PR hashtag and Twitter chat, and blog regularly at Waxing Unlyrical. Before we dive into our interview with Shonali, don't forget to subscribe to the Engati channel and that bell icon to get access to exclusive content from thought leaders across the globe. Shonali, we're really thrilled to have you with us today on the show.
Jeremy, thank you so much for having me. And Gati, thank you very much. It's quite a pleasure to be here.
Okay, Shonali, let's dive in. Okay,
Sure.
so my first question to you is, where should SMEs start with digital transformation? What should they be considering when they start their digital transformation journey?
That's such a good question, Jeremy. And, I think the phrase digital transformation is such a buzzword these days because everybody wants to be on that bandwagon, right? Oh, we're digitizing and we're transforming digitally. And a lot of times I think organizations think that by going digital, they are engaging in digital transformation. And as you and I know, that's not necessarily the case. We live in a digital world. We function in a digital world. We're conducting this interview thanks to the magic of digitization. But when it comes to digital transformation, that is really a cultural change within the organization. It has to be a cultural change. It has to be something that is really embedded at the core of the organization's business philosophy. And there has to be a very concerted effort to make sure that not only our senior leadership on board, but that there's a very methodical way of making sure it percolates through the organization. So one, I would say for any organization really thinking about digital transformation, what does that mean to them? What does that mean from a business point of view? How are they not just creating value, but how are they capturing value? That's something I've been learning a lot about through my professors at Harvard. As you know, I'm currently a student in the Harvard Business Analytics program. And then more than that, how is that percolating through the organization so that everyone is working in tandem, using their special skills to complement those of their colleagues in other business units to move the organization through this next phase of growth?
Absolutely. So it's not just, adopting a new piece of technology, something fancy, a little bit shiny, which you just see somewhere. It's a cultural shift. It's something that it has to pass down from the senior executives through the entire organization. Yeah, it's a cultural thing. But Shonali, are there any barriers in the path towards digitalization? And could you share some examples?
Oh my gosh, yeah, so many. And Jeremy, what you hit on, as we were talking earlier, that not only do senior leadership have to be on board, and as you said, once they are, that needs to be communicated down through the organization, but it also needs to go top up. So, when we think about organizations that are undergoing a process of digital transformation, We are really looking at organizations that may have functioned very vertically in silos, and we're really banishing those silos. We're demolishing them so that they're integrated more horizontally and in more of a matrix fashion. Um, Barriers could be so many things. There could be technological barriers, there could be financial barriers, there could be all sorts of things. But honestly, the biggest barrier, I think, is a psychological one. It is, do we need to change? We don't need to change. Why do we need to change? You're usually going to have probably basically three buckets of staff or people in an organization. You have the ones who are seeing the future, who want to change and know that they need to in order for the business to thrive and to grow. You'll have those who don't, who are either scared of change, who are so comfortable doing what they do and it's worked, for 20 years, 40 years, 100 years, maybe. Why bother? We can keep doing this. And then there are those in the fence, sitting on the fence, who could go this way or they could go that way, and whichever side kind of wins is where they'll go. I think one of the biggest, not barriers necessarily, but maybe stumbling blocks in the digital transformation process is often when the organization is sitting on what it needs to leverage for that transformation to really take place, but it just ignores it. And there's so many stories of organizations who've been sitting on the next thing in their line of work, in their business, in their space, usually driven by technology, because technology is what drives innovation, and they just ignored it. And one of the classic examples is Kodak. When you think about, they have the technology to go digital, and they're like, nah, not gonna happen. And
Yeah,
look at where we are now.
true. I mean, a lot of the time you just see people saying, hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But are you sure it ain't broke?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or could it work better? Could you optimize the business process? If you think if you think of the concept of a supply chain, what's your production process? Could you optimize that in some way? What are you leaving on the table that potentially could be repurposed to not just create value, but to capture value as well? GE did a terrific job of that some years ago when they really started to use their own intelligence. So there are so many places that an organization can find opportunities to both create and capture value, I think, the opportunities are boundless, but it really takes stepping back and being able to assess the landscape, as it were, in a very objective, impartial way, because you have to kind of keep the emotions out of it and say, okay, what's going on here? What could we do better? Are there certain customer groups or stakeholder groups that we're not serving as well as we could? What do we need to do to serve them better? And then what can we do to make sure that we're growing with our customers and stakeholders?
Absolutely. I do agree that people should be actually looking at the opportunity cost of not digitalizing. I mean, you've seen Netflix and Blockbuster, right?
Yeah,
You
another
don't
great
want
story.
to go up in the way of Blockbuster ever. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Shonali, what advice would you give to an SME who's struggling to align the digital transformation strategy with their business priorities?
Jeremy, I think obviously, as we were talking before we started recording the interview, communication is a huge, huge part of any effective business and efficient business working. So I do think that business communication as a discipline is significantly important. I don't think enough organizations understand that. They think because, well, we can all write, therefore we're communicating. As you and I know, that's not necessarily the case. But I think in a lot of organizations where you'll have that small group of innovators, the group of pioneers who's really kind of seeing the future. But at the same time, the business obviously needs to keep the lights on. They need to keep turning a profit. There's a reason they're in business. They need to keep serving their customers. And nobody wants to rock that boat. And I do understand that. And so I think kind of the explore, exploit concept, also that I learned about through Professor Tishman at Harvard, and there's plenty of it all over the internet is really important. If you can test something, see how that works without necessarily, breaking everything else, keep business as usual going, but allow your group of innovators or allow people who are coming up with these ideas, incubate them, give them a chance to actually develop something and see how it works. And because that's when you're also, testing new iterations maybe of your product or of your entire product line, of your entire space. But people need the security and the freedom to do that. So I think that is probably the most effective way of embarking on digital transformation, particularly in a scenario where there might not be complete alignment internally.
I love the idea of having a small innovation cell of sorts. So essentially, you could probably have the stuff that's working out in the present end up funding the stuff that's going to work out in the future.
That's exactly it.
Mhm.
That's exactly it.
Shonali, what would be, in your opinion, the most important positives and negatives of digital transformation on the most vital components like the customers, the clients, and the employees?
I'm obviously in favor of digital transformation because it's the way of the world, it's the way of life, right? I mean, look at where we are today. We are recording this on the 1st of December 2020, when we are all a year into a global pandemic, which I think from my understanding, the last time something like this occurred was literally 100 years ago. This would not be possible without significant transformation in how we communicate and how we engage and how we do business. So I think the sky is the limit when it comes to digital transformation. There's just so much opportunity. And there's so much potential for growth, for service. Because to me, that's what's really important, and that's what I've always loved about technology is how it allows us to be more of service. How does it allow us, because I come from a marketing communication background and PR, how does it allow us to help others? How does it allow us to communicate better, to understand each other better, and therefore work better and do more good? So there's so much opportunity, but the flip side to all of that is that we have to be even more careful because we are dealing with the digital space, which means that we are dealing with bits and bytes of people's personal information. So we have to be even more careful and scrupulous about ethics, about privacy, about respecting that, about making sure people understand what they are getting into at a very, at the customer consumer level. And then the other thing that happens with any kind of change is, when you build something, almost always something is going to break. And how do we minimize any kind of damage? I don't want to call it collateral damage because it's not a pleasant term, but, there are people who get hurt, or who might be less secure than they were in the past. How do we look after them? How do we make sure that they are taken care of? If they don't necessarily say on an employee level, maybe have the skills to contribute to, that side of the transformation scale. What can we do? How can we make sure that they are taken care of so that they're not just swept away in the wash? I think that's really, really important because as exciting as digital transformation is, most important is the human element because that's why we're here. So we cannot lose our empathy. We cannot lose our compassion. We cannot lose our very basic human need, which is to connect, be connected, and be of service.
Certainly, completely agree. And if you just throw your employees away like that, I'm pretty sure you won't find future employees who want to come near you. That just couldn't work out. Shonali,
Exactly.
what do you think, in your opinion, would be the most important soundbite that you'd like to leave our audience with today?
Well, I could come up with a whole bunch of sound bites. So what specific soundbite do you want?
I love this. Give me all of them.
Ooh, that's a dangerous question. Um, What I would say to anyone watching who is thinking about digital transformation, wanting to embark on it, struggling with it, intrigued by it, is learn. Um, as I was telling you, Jeremy, before we started recording the interview, I went back to school in 2019 to learn about the space, to learn about business analytics and how to really understand not just how to identify, but how to use the digital intelligence that sits in every aspect of an organization for good. Because that's what I've done in the PR space. I've done a lot of work in metrics and analytics for PR and marketing, but I wanted to uplevel that and I wanted to understand how I could take that basic interest and understanding and then grow it so that I could then map my communication skills and really help strategize growth for a business. But it all comes down to learning. So I would say surround yourself with people, learn. There's so much information that is available to us these days via the internet from wonderful schools like Harvard and so many others, Johns Hopkins, where I teach. Learn about it and then get your hands dirty. Participate in contests, try something. We only learn by doing, I think. So there's the academic learning, but then you actually have to practice and you actually have to do. And we're not going to win 100% of the time because then we wouldn't be human, but that's okay. Because we learn through our failures, and then ultimately one day we'll have a breakthrough and we're like, oh, I got that. And then you start to do the next thing. So learn, don't be afraid of failing, and most importantly, pay it forward.
Absolutely. Always have to keep learning. And might I add that it would be really cool if you could create a learning culture within your organization. That would probably even help you with your digital transformations if your employees are keen on learning. They're not going to get left behind. They're going to be learning the new things that you come up with, and you'll be able to take care of them in a much better fashion.
Absolutely, Jeremy. And that's actually something that's been pretty, strongly emphasized through the HBAP program, that training is a big part of, bringing your employees along with you. So.
Absolutely. This has been amazing, Shonali. Tell the audience where they can reach out to you.
You can find me at shonaliburke.com. That's probably the easiest place to go, SHONALIBURKE.com. I'm also on LinkedIn. So, again, just do a search for Shonali Burke. As of now, I believe I'm the only one. But those are probably the two best ways to reach me. I'm Shonali on Twitter, SHONALI. If you DM, I probably won't follow you back because I have a fair number of followers and I can't follow everybody back. But if you message me, I almost always reply unless, it's clearly a spammer. So thank you so much, Jeremy, for having me. This was such a pleasure. And I really wish you and the entire Engati team that is doing such great work every success.
Thank you so much. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your fantastic insights. I'm sure the audience is definitely going to love this. And folks, we're going to be back with a new episode and a new expert really soon, so stay tuned.